All right, we're live.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Peaslee Building Committee, and it's Tuesday, January 27th. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:03. This is the first monthly committee meeting of our new year, 2026, with future meetings scheduled for the fourth Tuesday of the month. So with that, I recognize that we do have a quorum of our building committee, and we'll move through our agenda. Our second agenda item is to approve our meeting minutes from December 2nd, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
It was moved by Lauren
I'll second.
and seconded by Rob to approve our meeting minutes from December 2nd. Is there any discussion? And hearing none, we'll vote by roll call. Rob,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Mike,
Aye.
and Erica says yes, so the motion carries. It is a pleasure to welcome our OPM and designer joining us tonight for our full team. And by way of an update from the OPM and designer, we will have a presentation. So I would welcome you to share your screen and walk us through a project update.
Yep, thank you. Jennifer, if you want to share your screen.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we'll be starting with just the OPM update on the second slide, what we've done over the past month. One more slide. The first thing was finalizing the designer contract and then also amending the OPM contract to match the town's budget allocation. We've also submitted the monthly report to the MSBA and submitted a copy of that to the town for their record. Most important probably would be we had our MSBA kickoff meeting with the town, Flansburgh, and the MSBA. During this, we discussed dates and certain milestones that we much must reach during the PDP and PSR phase, which Flansburgh will get into a little more at the end of the presentation. We updated the project schedule, which we'll be submitting to the MSBA this week. We submitted the pro pay to the town and invoice 4 and 5 for review, and we're hoping those will be voted on tonight. And then we also submitted BR R1 to the MSBA. I'll pass it over to Flansburgh to give you a little bit of a design update.
Perfect. And just to echo what just like walk through, the MSBA kickoff was great. We met with, I believe, 4 members of the MSBA team. They've reviewed the overall schedule, and looking at that, they feel everything is adequate to meet their milestones. And then with that, they were a little bit aggressive on a couple ones, but overall we need to coincide, not necessarily on the PDP, that's the phase we're in right now, but the PSR, because this will put us in a great position heading into the Springtown vote. And I'll go over that later on our last slide with the workflow chart. But the school's been tremendous as we go into existing conditions. So when our contracts were signed, we put our teams on the ground looking at the survey, doing test borings to understand where a building could be set. And those test borings are not an easy fit. They would drill down, 50 feet, 30 to 50 feet. So they hit rock, and our wetland scientists also went out. So we had about 4 site entities that went out. And what you see right now is just a basic graphic. It's pretty simplified, but there's a lot of work that went into this. This will coincide with how we look at design test fits and our options moving forward. So what you see here is we began to map out, again, verified locations of utilities, verified locations of wetlands, and our setbacks. So this is really important because this is going to show us where we can begin to study where an addition or new construction may exist on your slide. So we looked at water, electrical, data, gas, sewage, and the drainage system, as well as like the overall septic. So all this gets collected in one data point on the existing survey. And this is what the MSBA wants to see. So when we start looking at different test fits, we're not showing something that isn't feasible. So next slide.
I have a question. When you
Yep,
have
go
when
ahead.
you're saying like water and those dotted lines, are you saying those are water lines, or you're saying that that's like a creek or something?
No, so Jennifer, if you can zoom back into this diagram, I'll walk you through exactly what we're talking about. So as you see in that kind of pink highlighted, that's your existing school building. So those are existing utilities feeding it. So we have your general water lines feeding the school, your electrical, data, and your gas feeds. And then you have what's associated with your parking lots and the building runoff, which is how you collect the runoff that has to be treated. And then your septic, which is a standalone septic on this site. So those are the hard utilities that involve how your current building exists today. So as we look at options, we want to look at minimizing disruption to those utilities to keep your building functioning when we begin looking at different options. We don't want to divert those utilities, but as we get into some of the design options, we might divert those because that might be in the greater good of the overall project. When we look at the wetlands, so that's that pink dash line. Jennifer, you want to zoom in a little bit on that? So we had a wetland scientist come in and they went and flagged those in the beginning of December. So they went and they looked at vegetation. This is before snowfall. And the way they validate that, they look at different types of vegetation. They look at the elevation levels on the banks. And so that pretty much justifies where the wetlands are. The blue dash line represents stay out of that blue dash line if you're proposing a building, more or less.
Thank you.
So
Rob,
what
go ahead, Kent. And then I saw Rob's hand, but Kent, you
so
finish.
what that does is it begins to focus our attention on where we can put an addition or new construction. So in the beginning of December, that's what they were validating when they were out on site. And again, thank you for the school for letting everybody go out there and do this activity. Now with that does not mean we can also meet with like local conservation commissions, etc., planning board, and we can look at those lines. But for our starting point, that blue dash line, we want to stay out of that. Now that does not necessarily mean you can't put a roadway or a walkway within that. But for a physical building, you need to stay justified outside of that blue dash line.
Thank you.
So Kelly, does that kind of align with what you were?
It does. Thank you. Yeah. At first, the dotted blue line, I was thinking that was like a river or something. I was like, I didn't know they
No.
had like things like it. So I was like confused by it. So yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
No, it's a whole series of offsets, and that'll be part of a future phase that goes in the PSR phase. And then we'll be more in tune with what your community and conservation commission deem on this site. But for the MSBA purposes, they're going to want to see that that blue line exists. That's the offset from what you currently have. So when they start looking at these design test fit options, they don't want to see a building right next to the wetlands. And so what this does, it begins to show you your restrictions and constraints within the site.
Thank you. Rob?
Good clarification, Kent. My question was, what was the method used to verify the current building utilities? Was that a GPR survey? Was that an existing conditions report that had as-built from a previous construction project? How are those determined?
Everything you just said. So we had people on site for 5 days to verify where they could see visually where utilities were coming in. So there's different classifications for that. So there's a kind of class D, which is just using GPS. But we put them on site so they could verify exactly where they're honing in to those different utilities. If there's underground, we're not there yet.
Okay.
So that's going to be a whole nother classification in the next round. What we need to do right now is tell the MSBA and the residents of Northborough that we feel confident where we have information based, that when we start doing those design test fits, we know where the utilities are. And
Yes, completely agree. My concern was more that prior to any sort of boring rig or shovel in the ground for a test pit, a ground penetrating radar survey is conducted to completely avoid the possibility of utility strike.
nope, 100%. So we did have Semiotis, who's our civil engineer. They went out and did independent infiltration soils. So they were able to get a gradient of how, when you look at stormwater management, how that may occur. And DigSafe was contacted. And then when we did the structural borings, we made sure it was well outside of where we knew the septic system was. And so that's those 30 to 50 foot until they hit, granite, et cetera, to that point of like refusal. So that's already been tracked. We've already conducted that. So again, we're at feasibility. If this project moves forward next April, pending a successful town vote, there'll be another round of this. So this is enough for us to get enough information that when we show you an option, that we are confident that it's going to be outside of your utilities, your septic, most importantly. And what we begin to do is hone into where that addition, renovation, or new construction might occur. But yeah, DigSafe was contacted. DPW's done a tremendous job helping us with items that weren't officially documented. So we've gone through that. So now we have an official survey on the first pass to be confident on where we're going.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mike?
Yep. Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Kent. Just a quick question. Notice the sewer/drainage line towards the street front of the building.
Yep.
Is it actually connected to the town sewer, or is that what that is down there?
It is. So currently that's on-site septic. And
Okay.
when I go into the workflow chart, we're having conversations with DPW, et cetera, because there might be an opportunity to connect to town sewer, which would be a win-win for everybody. On-site septic jobs are difficult. We've done a lot of them. And if at the end it's not feasible to connect to town sewer, the project will proceed like that. So we need to look at all those. And so we have an ongoing meeting next week with DPW to understand if that's an opportunity. We'd love it. We'd love it if it turned out that we could. So
Okay.
to be continued. But what you see right now in that dark shaded green is the on-site septic. And so right now for this project, we are moving forward with, we have to replicate and accommodate any design enrollment, any building being connected to an on-site septic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer, if you can go to the next slide. So if you zoom in there. So the previous slide showed the topography. They did 1 foot intervals. They looked at that. But when we look at the site overall, we kind of stripped it back just so you might be more familiar with what you see in the screen. there's the existing building, same utilities, there's the wetlands, the blue highlighted dashed line is the setback for any future building. And so located that you see to the upper side of the page, if you're looking at new construction, that's the optimal location. Now, that does not mean when we start looking at different options, which is going to be forthcoming, that if that septic has to be temporarily relocated, a connection, or the final septic, to create flexibility in how we look at design options, we're going to study that. But this gives you a look at, you have a lot of woodlands to the east, residential and streets and DPW to the north. And when we hone in, there's areas to the south of the existing building, but you got to be respectful of Maple Street. And so this just summarizes kind of the area that we're focusing on a potential option. And then we want to make sure, because you do have ample site, that your existing school functions, minimizing disruption. We will look at options that require modular classrooms, but I want everybody to be aware, modular classrooms come at a big price tag and they're not reimbursed as part of this project. So we have modular classroom projects right now that we're doing 14 classrooms, which is relatively modest, and it's in the $5 million price range. That's not reimbursed. So we need to put all these factors into the equation. So we're just showing this graphic as an overlay of where potentially we can build by being respectful to your ongoing school.
Hey, Ken, sorry, one more quick detailed question. Can you just clarify the pink dashed line that indicates the wetland? See in the bottom middle, it just sort of loops around and then stops. Why does that not continue?
So the pink is a no disturb line. So there's no work going in the pink. That's 35 feet. And so as that trickles down, as you go to the bottom of the slide, we can't build within that 35-foot setback. And that'll be a conversation with Conservation Commission and the Planning Board as we move forward. But you can't encroach any more than that 35. That's a no-fly zone no matter what. The 100-foot is the no building. So we can't put a building within that 100-foot without negotiation with conservation and your local jurisdiction. So again, we're at PDP. This is just collecting information, but we're not going to show a building within that 100-foot at this point.
Yep.
It does not mean that you can't put a roadway or a walkway within that 100-foot, but that will involve conversations with your local town. And we don't want to do that in PDP. It's too early. So we have to take a conservative measure, stay outside of those restrictions because we're not there yet. I don't think, looking at your overall area, you have plenty of space to build a school with both enrollments and stay without encroaching on the 100-foot.
Thank you.
But Kevin, that's a great question because it's going to come up within this group multiple times. Any more comments on just the general site approach and the information collected to date? I'm giving you an abbreviated version, but there's full reports that are going to come from our civil engineer, our environmental scientists, that are going to back those findings for this first phase. Okay, so part of the process is inventorying your existing building. And we collected existing drawings from when this is complete. We did a walkthrough of the Lincoln School, which is the companion school built at the same time. And so we know the square footages. we know how it's classified within what you're delivering. So you see a variety of different shades here. So we have core academic, which are your classrooms, special education highlighted in orange, the gymnasium, cafeteria. And this is really important because we're going to go into it in the next slide, and we're going to spend a lot of time on the MSBA space template. But the first step is understanding what you have existing and how you're using it. And that's going to dovetail into how we inventory it on your MSBA space template, but also the educational program. And I will tell you right now, you've been extremely resourceful in how you're allocating space within this age building. And what you see right now is very simple diagram of how these different color-coded areas correspond to the MSBA space template. Is there any comment on the existing spaces? It just tracks what you have currently. And then we're going to take that and we dovetail that into the MSBA space program. And that's how they evaluate what you currently have. All right, next slide. So again, due diligence, it's all about collecting information. We look at from different trades, from electrical, the site, utilities, and architecture. And then we look at those to prioritize for not where you stand currently, but where the codes are now and projected to be within the next 3 years. And if you go to the chart on the right hand side, so this is another project. So we're in the middle of evaluating the different components, and we're going to classify these for the cost of construction. So we look at the superstructure. Good news, our structural engineer walked your building. It's a great building. There's not too many things to, fix currently. But if you did a renovation project, you have to bring up the code. So there will be a lot of different code compliant options that are rolled into the superstructure. Electrical, it all has to be replaced. Mechanical, it has to be replaced. The thermal envelope has to be replaced. You can't leave the existing brick in place, even though it looks great right now. There's different provisions. So that's where the cost of renovating the option is going to push it to a whole nother level. We're not going to go there right now in this conversation, but this is an age facility that does not meet current code standards. And so when we look at your particular building and we put these different provisions, as you see here, adequate, not adequate, at the end of the day, the superstructure is probably going to be the only thing that's adequate. And if you renovate it, you have to renovate to a whole nother level, which means we have to reinforce every member, etc. So going in for a renovation, when you look at today's code requirements, it's going to make this building similar to new construction. And it does not meet Massachusetts School Building Authority space requirements. So those are the kind of things you have to understand as we go through this process. So we're going to update this chart to reflect our engineer's code report. And then you'll see at the end of the day, the superstructure is adequate. But that's probably going to be the only thing. Everything else is going to probably fall into the red zone. Any questions on that? You have a facility that served your town well for many years. And now you have to get in front of it. And the reason you're in front of it is because the MSBA recognizes that too. That's why they welcome you into this grant process. Next slide. So part of the existing facilities assessment, our engineers, as you see in the schedule, we went out and we front loaded a lot of the activity during December. So a lot of the site work that you saw in that diagram before, that consists of wetland scientists, surveys, soil analysis by our civil engineers, and boring analysis by our geotech engineers that will help us determine where we can build a building. Also, during the winter break, the architects, engineers, MEP, fire protection, security went out and we analyzed. So this is a schedule that shows you all the due diligence by the different consultant groups, and they're formulating their reports currently. And that's going to be part of the preliminary report document that will be submitted to the MSBA. And again, that chart I was showing you on the previous page, you're going to see a lot of those fall in the red zone that have to be replicated in any co-compliant option, new construction option, renovation addition option that's required by the MSBA. And so this is just kind of a schedule of our consultants doing due diligence. Our traffic engineer is going to go out and evaluate traffic patterns within the site, and our landscape architect will go out once the snow kind of hopefully dissipates a little bit, and we'll add that to the report. But right now, we're in a great place to get the MSBA report out, which is slated for April 2nd. Any question on activity that's been happening at the school to date? All right, next slide. So architectural, the roof is in fair condition. I think meeting anything to today's thermal evaluation has to be replaced. Doors and windows are original. They have to be replaced. There's no building management system that's fundamental into how we build buildings today, and the MSBA is going to expect how you are going to integrate that into a new school. There's hazardous materials that are present. We will have, as a touch base during February vacation, have our hazardous materials engineers go out and evaluate that. Again, they just do visual observation only. We're not doing anything disruptive. And then we go into the program and how it meets your size. And I'll go into the space template to show you how you are deficient currently for an elementary school. And the exterior envelope will have to be completely replaced, meaning if the superstructure is sound, we are still removing the entire perimeter of that building to accommodate thermal compliance. So that's it on architecture. It's pretty entailed, but basically you're looking at a gut renovation from our observations that were done in December. Next slide. Structural good news. The building's performing well. Overall, it's a little sediment within over the years, and minor corrosion happening here and there that can be dealt with. So if you're not part of the MSBA project, which you are currently, but if you're not, and it's not voted next April, you'll have a great report on what you need to remedy with that existing building. But structurally, it's a good building. But when you look at the thermal analysis and you look at any provisions you need to do to maintain MSBA standard spaces, you're going to be forced to do a renovation at some point. Therefore, you're renovating the entire building. But today, you're great. If you want to modify it, that's going to put you into a different spectrum. Next slide. Fire protection and plumbing, lots of different areas are not ADA compliant. We had a recent job with the domestic hot water with a a system that was put in place. That's great to keep it ongoing, but overall, everything needs to be replaced for fire protection and plumbing. And we'll send that show out, and I welcome any comments after about this, but essentially, you do not comply with a current, when this goes out in probably 2028, you're not going to align with any standard. So all these systems have to be replaced. Next slide. HVAC, everything's obsolete here. You've been resourceful. It has to be replaced. So our engineer team will meet with the town. We'll meet with the leadership team meeting. We'll give you options on where you need to go to replace this for a code compliant option and new construction or ad reno. Next slide. Same thing with electrical. It's a antiquated system. Again, bullet points here, but there will be a full report that everybody can review prior to submitting to the MSBA on April 2nd. Next slide. And then security, again, we base this on best practice for today. There's a lot of work that needs to happen within that building. There's a lack of intrusion detection, video surveillance, etc. And this is something that we will put into our base of design as we submit it. But today, works great. School's been diligent on keeping up with standards. But if this is a project with the MSBA, it needs to be completely revamped. Next slide. Okay, so that was a lot with existing conditions. And as I said, school facilities done a tremendous job. You keep up with everything that you need to do, but being part of the MSBA process, and they evaluated this too. This is one of the reasons that you're here to evaluate this project. We have to bring everything up to state standards, and the current school is not at that. And I think everybody knows that because we wouldn't be standing here in a school building committee. So I'll open that with any questions, if there's any surprises to this age facility and kind of where we are right now. Okay, very good. So the MSBA space template. This is a device that the state put in progress a long time ago. In 2004, they started doing their first kickoff with the state template. And that essentially was to control folks from putting a lot of athletics and auditoriums and taking away from science and music and art and general classrooms. And so when they revamped this in 2004, they created a standard. Now that standard does not mean it is Northborough. They want to make this Northborough. So they want you to adjust it. They don't want you to take the state template and just say, yeah, we'll roll in with it. They want you to work with it. They want you to look in special education, core academic. And that's part of what we're doing with the leadership team and part of their visioning. And so that is a group that we've been working on since December. And so we're ongoing working on the space template. And I'll just give you an update to that. Next slide.
Kent, question. You said it was 2004, so like 22 years ago. Is the state going to be updating their template at all?
That's when they initiate. No, they initiate it every 3 years.
Okay.
So what happened was prior to 2004, when the MSBA was formally brought in, it used to be called the SBC, School Building Authority. And they put in a whole new protocol to make sure that folks were aligning with not oversizing their building or undersizing their building. So that's part of the enrollment. So in 2004, that's when the state of Massachusetts put a whole new protocol on how you should execute these projects. And that's what we're into. This space template is not 2004
Okay.
initiative. They update this every, I would say, 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Great.
So you have the latest and greatest.
Okay.
So yeah, 100%. No, this is not antiquated.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. And so what they've done is, again, listening to districts, seeing where they need to maybe provide more support than they did initially, going back to 2004, teacher planning spaces, cafeteria spaces, making sure that it's community use. And so this template that you see right now is probably the 7th generation of that. So this is the latest and greatest, as you see here. Now, what we typically like to see is you align with all the categories. Special education is the part that's really unique. So we want to make sure that aligns with what is currently on track with Northborough. And what that means is when you write your educational program, you want to make sure you're capturing all your special education spaces, because then if you're requiring more than the default, it will be potentially eligible for reimbursement. What's not eligible for reimbursement are bigger gyms, bigger cafeterias, things like that. But when it comes to core academic and special education, they want to listen to exactly what you feel Northborough is. And so when we look at the 310, sorry, when we look at the smaller enrollment, that involves the pre-K. And so you have kindergarten that's part of it, you have general classrooms that's part of it. And then when we inventory, Jennifer, you can zoom in a little bit. So right now, as you see those columns, what you see on the left side, existing additions, that's your existing school. So you're under the state default of special education. So we're going to take a deeper dive into understanding what that means with your curriculum and meeting with those directors that are part of it. So you can see that you're at 3,700. The state default is at 4,500. And that's a given. So you're not going to turn that away. But we're going to populate those spaces to make sure when we do that center column in the middle, that's a total, that you're meeting your special education value. Now, through this process, you might be over the 4,500 that they have listed. And that's what we're going to do during the visioning and the educational program that's happening within the next 2 months. Art and music, we typically see those aligning. You're pretty low, as you see right in the template. So, we're at 1,300, their default's 2,500. So that's what's going to be populated. I don't think you're going to pull back on that area. Physical education. Now, this is part of being a project with elementary schools within the Commonwealth. They give you what you need, which is 6,300 square feet. You're at 3,600. So your gym is undersized. So when we start looking at those test fits, your existing gym can't accommodate the MSBA default square footage. So that's going to be the first component that may be an addition or part of a new construction option, because you can't meet that within your existing building. Does everybody understand that component? You're at 3,125 for your existing space, the default 6,000. I think that's a pretty straightforward one. All right, next slide. And if you deem to go beyond that, maybe to support other community uses, you can do that. You can increase the size of your gymnasium. It's just not reimbursed by the state of Massachusetts. So a lot of elementary schools will increase that by a little bit, and that's something that this group will have to ultimately, weigh in on. Media center, from the default, you're pretty close, but you're in two separate spaces, and so that's an increase for the media center. Food service with the cafeteria, you're pretty close, as you see lined out here. And so this document on April 2nd is going back to the MSBA. So they're going to want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with aligning with either the increase or you're requesting additional space. Medical, so pretty much aligns with what they're doing for the smaller enrollment. And then administration, slight increase, what they would see in their default. And then custodial, an increase there as well. And then part of the space template at the end is this enrollment also brings the pre-K. And so we're slated for 5 pre-K classrooms. We put that under the other. And because you were diligent to put the pre-K in, that's eligible for reimbursement. And then if we track down to the very end, you can see your existing is around 45,000 square feet. On your assessor's database, it's 50,000, but we feel that's because they included the courtyard. And then with the pre-K for this building, you're at 66.5, and then the vault is at 55.5 for the MSBA, and that's primarily due to the pre-K. So for our purposes, we're using the 66.5 for the smaller enrollment, including the pre-K. And again, this is going to be validated with special education. That might move the needle for an increase to that. There might be an appetite to increase the size of the gymnasium beyond the default. But for our purposes right now, we're focusing on 66.5 for the smaller enrollment. Any questions on that? All right, so then we'll move into the next option. So now we're at 625 to 3.5. And again, for this, the way the MSBA put this out is it does include the pre-K. Now, that does not mean through the visioning process and developing the educational program, the pre-K can drop out of this option. But for right now, for this phase, we're going to carry the pre-K. And so you're looking at, again, the column on the left, existing additions. It has to be compared to the Peaslee. I know it doesn't equate to exactly what you're doing with the larger enrollment, but you have 27 general classrooms. We go into the space template for special education. You're at 7,500 square feet compared to what you currently have. So everything just amplifies and grows with this enrollment. Art and music grows. You have 1,300 square feet. They're giving you 5,000 square feet. So when you increase your enrollment for the 3.5, with their formula, it increases all the different categories. But they're going to want to compare to the Peaslee, the existing school. The unfortunate part about this is when it comes to PE and the gymnasium size, it doesn't matter. They're going to still keep to the 6,000 square foot gymnasium. So even though you have a bigger enrollment, they're going to keep to the state default. And if you want to increase that, it will not be eligible for reimbursement. A lot of our schools do push that up, and if there's an appetite within the community, they'll support that. Next slide. The media center grows as part of that. Dining and food service grows as part of that. So we're at 8,300 square feet that the state would provide. Medical stays, relatively the same, grows a little bit by having a larger suite. And then your guidance and administration grows as part of the larger enrollment. Custodial as well grows as part of that larger enrollment. And then historically, we do not see any requests in custodial maintenance beyond the MSBA default. We do not see any growth within the administration beyond the MSBA default. Administration, dining, food services, it really stays within core academic and special education. And then with that, currently in the PDP phase, which we're in, based on the enrollment letter, the MSBA will want us to look at the pre-K as part of this enrollment. Now, that does not mean after evaluating it, you could drop that off. That definitely is an option. We just want to complete this phase with it aligning with how the MSBA sent you the original enrollment letter. And so we are still tracking the 5 pre-K classrooms with additional support. Next slide, just to get to the bottom. And so what that means is the MSB default without the pre-K is shy over the 90,000. And when you incorporate the pre-K, you're looking at a project that's right under 100,000 square feet. And if you compare that 100,000 square feet of this larger enrollment from the smaller option, that'll tell you kind of the magnitude cost. Part of this phase is we're going to look at test fits, and we're also going to provide magnitude costs of both enrollments, whether it's addition renovation or new construction. So any comments on this process?
I don't see any hands raised, but on behalf of the committee, I'd like to say thank you for walking us through it. And the graphics are helpful, and it was helpful to me to spend time with this. And thank you for explaining everything thoroughly.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think all the future meetings are there's great aesthetic and looking at design options, but with the MSBA, this is their main focus, the space templates. So they're going to look at their default number compared to what you are proposing. Again, this is getting submitted on April 2nd, and we want to make sure that we're not putting, we're going to evaluate it for just what you need. And that goes a long way that you're, being diligent with this process. So yes, this is basically the default template, and we've added the pre-K to both options. So next slide will bring us to our workflow diagram. And I know it's a little hard to read, but there's 2 phases we're in right now. It's the PDP, the preliminary design phase. And so we have bi-weekly meetings with the leadership team, as well as our ongoing SBC meetings. And then there's other meetings that are involved with that as well, such as the touch base with DBW and other stakeholders within the town. And so it's all about collecting information. So during the PDP phase that you see from December to March, you can see a lot of it highlighted in purple. That was the existing conditions. So that's what the MSB wants to see, that everybody did their due diligence to understand the existing conditions of that building. What's really important to note here is we're going to start the educational visioning process and begin to work on the educational program within February and March. So that's going to dovetail into how you see education being delivered within your community and That all gets packaged up corresponding with that MSBA space template and the existing conditions that gets submitted on April 2nd. So with that, we have to do many test options. So we're going to look at a code compliant option that brings the existing building up to code. It does not mean let's be resourceful with your existing building and fix a boiler and, replace some windows. You have to bring it up to current code standards as a baseline. So that existing building at 45,000 square feet is a gut renovation that will be submitted on April 2nd. And then that will be a baseline for when they look at addition renovations and new construction. Now, nobody needs to make a decision on what option it's going to be. We're going to give you many different options. When that's submitted to the MSBA, there's no vote. We move right into the preferred schematic report. And meeting with the MSBA 2 weeks ago, they're going to want a singular option from this group voted on in mid-June. So there's a lot of activity that's going to happen. So we can do that for you and give you the fact-based information that you need. But the MSBA is requiring that to be submitted mid-June.
So
that
Ken, just one clarification around kind of the core building. So any expenditure, let's say the town went on its own and did not partner with MSBA, if anything triggers 50% of the assessed value of the building, it triggers stretch code, which means you'd have to do all the things you just spoke about. So that would be good to get that number of kind of the core cost of just updating systems and code compliance.
Yeah, so part of that is, and that's a very important component, is what do you do if you do nothing? You don't want to take advantage of the MSBA grant. So we'll have those data points. And again, it'll be not necessarily following the MSBA protocol, but we will be able to extract out if you did the boiler in 5 years, if you did the roof year 10. So we'll be able to map that out for you. But that's a really good point, Superintendent. And we're going to help you with that, because that's not the code compliant option is bringing the entire existing building, not meeting state standards for your spaces, but doing it within a normal construction period, which would be 2 years. So we're going to help you understand all those ailments and what's realistic over not 2 years, but maybe what it would be over 15 years. And so that'll be a big talking point, and we'll express that with the group, and we'll share some exhibits that we have with the group. But to satisfy the PDP phase, we have to give you the code compliant option built, going out to bid 2 years later. This is what it takes. It's going to be a big price tag to bring that building up to standard. And that code compliant option, I will say right now, may not be supported by the MSBA, because it might not meet your space standards. It certainly won't meet special education requirements. And you can't verify that that code compliant option will even be supported by the state. And your best alternative is it's going to be an addition renovation, new construction, but we're going to give you the backup. So when we go out to the community, we'll be able to express those values.
So you're saying, so in 5 months, by mid-June is when we will decide on if it's going to be if we're going to like expand the numbers or keep the same. Is that what you're saying? Is mid-June?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. By mid-June, you're going to decide if it's going to remain a neighborhood school or you're going to go interchange consolidation.
Okay.
And that meets the MSBA timeline for them to do a board vote to support that option in August. So there's a lot of work to do before mid-June. And this is part of the process. So all those engineers coming out in December, getting their due diligence in the report, it's going to show you that your existing building is a gut rehab. It's going to put it into another classification. Dovetail with the educational program, which will tell you where you're going to lead to. But by mid-June, you're going to decide on one singular option.
And where would we be in timeline for like town meeting? Would this stuff be discussed at like a town meeting level prior to the mid-June, or do we not present to the town until after? I'm just worried about like if we were to make a decision and bring it to MSBA mid-June, but we don't have town, are we gonna fall into what happened to a neighboring town of ours? I don't want to say their name, but you know what I
Well,
mean? So at what
that.
point do we involve the town to get the buy-in, you know?
Well, you could always have a. I'll just use the term, and you'll correct me. I'll say you can always have a courtesy town meeting to explain that. But part of the process is we're going to have community outreach
Okay.
prior to June, so we can take a temperature on how everyone feels about the options with magnitude costs. But
Okay.
you only require one town meeting vote, which is going to happen in the spring of the following year.
2027.
Yep, which is going to happen in the following year.
Mhm.
So Kelly, what we discussed is that the April town meeting might be an opportunity to do a brief presentation and solicit some feedback from the citizens who attend that town meeting, be it obviously non-binding, but it'd be a nice way to include like citizens who attend that meeting to get
Yeah,
feedback.
I think it would be a good temperature of the water, basically, you know. So we're not blindsided or they're not blindsided.
So the outreach is going to be probably a separate part of this conversation, but that's going to be fundamental because right now we're in January. So we need to have that outreach going into June for one singular option being selected. Now after June, you have June through the MSBA board vote, which they will support your option, which is a great, like, kudos to all the great work that's been happening. But that's gives you those months to build consensus within your community. If you push it past the April of 2027, we're going to add escalation to those costs. And it's going to grow and it's going to keep growing. So being part of the process, it does expedite it, but we want to be diligent and be respectful to getting the message out. So March through June is going to be intensive to get the outreach out, to understand that there are many options being studied. No one's made a decision, and we're going to understand what the pulse is of your community. But this group, this SBC group, needs to make that final vote in June so we can submit it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? This is the last slide that's presented tonight. Does anyone have any other questions on this portion of the agenda, which is the designer and OPM update? And I'll go with Mike first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ken, as part of the process leading up, with cost estimates leading up to a June decision, if we were to go with, say, consolidation or in the evaluation of consolidation or not, do you help determine what any quantified savings would be in a consolidation model? Like, is that part of what you'll, or who would help us sort of determine that, what those numbers are?
We're taking the options for that April 2nd April 2nd, and we're going to apply it to the smaller enrollment and the consolidation option. So you'll have at least a feeling of where it's going to go on April 2nd. And then we continue to refine those options. We're required to refine those options into the next period. So you'll have a magnitude cost, as well as the educational visioning that's happening at the same time to see if it's a viable option for consolidation within your community. Does that help? So you'll have costs and the educational backing to support either option.
Right. So, right. I mean, you would think, right, just looking at the square footage differences, right, the bigger building obviously is going to cost more. Is part of that analysis and the data that, like, or who would help us, I guess, as a question out to the group, who would help determine, okay, if you're going to look at the possibility of a larger building for additional cost, then what is the savings associated with losing that building? Who helps us quantify and determine that as part of the decision process?
But currently, so we're going to help you with that with the OPM, but ultimately it's going to come down to Northborough. So if you go with the consolidation, it looks like you're only replacing one building in kind currently. I don't think you're taking other buildings offline as part of this project with consolidations, but that's not for me to determine.
Yeah, so through the chair, Mike, I think what we'd have to do is look at our long-term capital plan, look at our 4 elementary schools, talk about, okay, if we continue to have 4 elementary schools, we bring a new elementary school online, what's the capital cost to improve, future schools? If we took one school and we went from 4 elementary schools to 3, what would the cost be to operate 3 versus 4? So I think we would have to do that internal analysis to get, the long-term benefit of cost savings from an operations standpoint.
Okay, thanks for clarifying there, Greg. And you're confident that's something we could have to help make a determination within that time frame that was
Yeah, I think
outlined.
we could work with Kent and get a sense of kind of projected energy savings, and we can do that work internally.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thanks, guys.
Any other questions on this portion of our agenda? Hearing none, thanks again, Kent and team, for presenting this and taking the time with us and helpful graphics.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm going to move through. We have some more housekeeping items in this to wrap up this agenda. We're at agenda item number 5, which is the invoice review. You have received a packet which includes the invoices that are being reviewed during this billing cycle. And that packet went out to the invoice review team. And again, thank you to Rob and Jason and Mike for volunteering to look at these ahead of time. Before a motion is made, are there any comments from the invoice review team? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion regarding the invoices to be reviewed and approved.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion has been made by Mike. Is there a second?
I will second.
Rob seconds. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Rob,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. Motion carries. Regarding subcommittee reports, we really have one subcommittee to discuss, which is the Communications Subcommittee. This committee has not yet met, and so we've had a preliminary discussion the OPM and design team on what would be most beneficial as we look at ramping up the communications subcommittee. I think you would all agree, looking at the timeline that was on the previous slide, there is much opportunity for a communications subcommittee by way of outreach to the town. And also Northborough Media has been looped in to help with some capturing of existing conditions as we approach our town to make a big decision in spring of 2027. So that being said, I would like to resurrect the communications subcommittee volunteer ask. And so I'm looking for a round of hands. We're looking to assemble, ideally, the subcommittee would be 3 members of this main committee. And so by quick show of hands, if you are at all interested and available in learning more about what that would entail on the communications subcommittee, if you could just shout out to me now, I'll take your name and then we'll reach back out so that we can get this up and running. And just as a aside, this would involve some filming and interview and media so that it's information distributed to the town and sort of oversee the content that is important that needs to get out to key stakeholders in our town. So just a show of hands, or if you're interested in sort of being on that list, and I'll jot your names down now.
I'm interested. The availability thing is just
Kelly, you have the equivalent of about 8 full-time jobs is kind of what I have learned about you. But I would gladly jot your name down and do what we can to sort of work around and maybe get you a 9th job.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write down Kelly. Is there a second person?
Oh, if it's just me, then we really can work around my schedule.
Yes.
Well, since I get along with Kelly so well, you can jot my name down.
Hey, Mike, you're
Erica.
another one who has about 8 jobs that I know of. So I don't know what
meetings are going to be on Monday nights.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Don't do
okay.
me any favors.
We'll start 11:30 p.m. That's good. Okay, so we'll do Kelly and Mike. And if anyone else is interested and wants to reach out, but we'll look, Kent and Karina and I will look to sort of get this launched. This should be pretty exciting. So thank you for that. With that, I would move on to any new items of new business. And before I reach out to committee members, I will bring something before you. We have received a letter of support and also resignation from Diana Nicholas, and we're thankful for her participation so far and for her sharing her expertise. And so as such, I would be looking for someone to fill that role as a vice chair. This is on paper, we need to submit you in that official capacity from the town and to the MSBA. And your duties would be that if Erica is in the hospital, and God forbid, because I also am a person with about 8 full-time jobs, but if that were to happen, that you would need to be available to chair a meeting and keep this team on track. At this point, we have sort of a monthly standing meeting. So I don't know if there's anyone here tonight who thought about it and that you might be considered. And this team will need to have a motion and take a vote on any individual who would step in to fill Diana's shoes.
I would like to move to recommend Rob for vice chair if he's
I was
willing
going to do that too.
step up to that position.
I was going to say the same thing.
Well, if you're going to say it, it has been moved, Lauren. Is there
And
a
I'll
second?
second it.
And Kelly has seconded. I'd like to allow an opportunity for discussion. Anyone like to discuss? Rob, you have any thoughts?
Is this where I tell everybody how many jobs that I have to compare to Mike and other? No,
It's not a contest, but
no. Kidding aside, I would accept those responsibilities. May need a little coaching along the way, but I would humbly accept.
Thank you. Any more discussion? It's been moved and seconded that Rob Tomasetti be voted in as the vice chair for the Peaslee Building Committee. I would now take a vote by roll call, starting with Rob.
Oh, I vote for myself. Aye.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. Motion carries. Thank you all, and thank you, Rob, for stepping up. Appreciate it. At this time, I would welcome any other items of new business from committee members. Jason?
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify one thing before Flansburgh gets off the call. You had mentioned there's a meeting with the DPW. I think you said it was next week. I just looked at my calendar and I have that scheduled on my calendar for tomorrow. And I think that matches the schedule that you were showing on the screen. So just make sure, I just wanted to make sure that people are going to be there at the meeting tomorrow.
Kent, you're muted.
Yes, well,
It's
that meeting is
tomorrow.
scheduled,
Yes,
yeah, for
100%
tomorrow.
for tomorrow.
Cool.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm looking at too many things right now, but yes, 100%. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other items of new business from our committee members? All right, hearing none, I would now open the meeting to public comment. We would welcome any participation from members of the public, asking that you state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, I don't see any raised hands. I don't hear any voices. So I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. Thanks for your time and careful thought about this project. It is a pleasure to serve with you and think about this with you. It is 8:15 and I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Kelly moved,
Second.
Lauren seconded. Any discussion? I'll take a vote by roll call, starting with Rob,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. Thank you all and have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great night.